He recently turned 700K into $4 million on Ondo, and he did it fully publicly. This was not some random fluke millions of dollars made. This was a complete strategy, system, process that Erebos has designed himself. Being able to buy something when no one talks about it and sell it when everyone is, basically predicting the future. And you have to be good at predicting the future, obviously, to make that work. What is the Ondo trade that you've done?
And so I felt like it was just a perfect timing. The market was super.
All right, guys, welcome back. How's it going? I am back with another interview with another very, very successful trader / investor called Erebos. You would not have seen him on Twitter much. You might have seen him recently. I wanted to bring him on because he's a mastermind member. He's a friend of mine. He recently turned 700K into $4 million on Ondo, and he did it fully publicly. You can see his wallets publicly linked on his Twitter account. I'm going to link some photos on the screen of the original tweet that he posted showing when he entered, and also his position sizes now that, Ondo's obviously gone up significantly since he entered about 4 months ago. And this was not some random fluke millions of dollars made. This was a complete strategy, system, process that Erebos has designed himself, from being a member of the mastermind, learning, some of the stuff that I teach, but then also largely applying his own process and system to the market that he's learnt. In combination, he's done really, really well. And I wanted to bring him on here so he can break down his strategy, so he can teach us what he did, so that you guys can all go out and try to implement something similar now that you know what he's done personally to make $4 million in 4 months, right? Life-changing money. So Erebos, welcome to the channel. I'd love for you to give us an introduction into yourself, how you got into crypto, all that usual stuff. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot, Dan. It's a pleasure, especially interesting being kind of like a student and now talking with you now. All right, so introduction. Like a lot of people, I joined in 2018, basically bought the top. And it's funny because I saw an article about altcoins going nuts, like 100x in 2017. And like a minute later, I was hooked. It was, for me, my ticket to financial freedom. So I spent then the next few years hustling as much as I could. So, well, I think it's useful to go through quickly the journey. So basically, I was a student, broke. I actually dropped out of university to focus on crypto. It was really a degen move, but it paid off. And then, so as I said, learned everything I could day and night. And then I realized I was broke, so I needed some capital, got some temporary jobs, save as much as I could. I managed to invest around 15K in 2 years, all from working and saving. And I stumbled upon Chainlink, which was really one of the best investments last cycle, made 100x on my first buys, and that took me from 15 to 300K. And then, since it was late cycle, I got out of Chainlink and used that money to make some flips on token launches. So, like ICOs, mostly on DeFi, but some gaming, and pretty much like I do now, wait for a good opportunity, go quite big, make a 2-3x, get out. Did that a couple of times. And by the end of the cycle, I was at 3M. And then, this cycle, I started with 2M and currently standing at 13 million, feeling very good about myself, obviously. And yeah, it's good. Like, I don't know about you, but at some point you reach a level, like you start to get it. Like, I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing. I can see how the game works, but also I'm aware I have so much learned to master. So that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think what's sort of even more impressive than this $4 million Ondo win is the fact that since 2018, you've gone from 15K to 14 million US dollars in about, what is that, like
6 years?
6 years, basically. Yeah. And not many people can say they've done that. And not many people can say they've done that pretty much exclusively from just crypto. Like, you can obviously make a lot of income and then do crypto, and it's a combination, but you've pretty much just from the markets turned 15K into 14 mil. And obviously this is all information that, I don't know if your whole portfolio is public, but a lot of it is on your Twitter account. I'm going to link your Twitter account here for everyone to follow you. That this journey that you've been on, have people can see publicly, it's not a joke, it's not a LARP, it's real, which is super, super cool. And I think we'll learn a lot from you today. But in this interview, I really want to focus in on the recent Ondo play, because obviously it's just recently you've had this win. You've had a lot of epiphanies, insights, lessons that you've learned. Given that it was so recent, I figured it'd be a perfect time to talk about this. So what is the Ondo trade that you've done? You turned 700K into 4 mil. How did you sort of know that was going to happen? What was your thinking? You know, what's the context behind that entire trade that you've done here?
For sure. So the beginning was the Celestia listing, which was, I don't know, October, I think. And I was watching it, but I missed out on it just because I was waiting, whatever. And so I got the sense that, okay, listings for like hot coins are going to be a play. And so then I spent quite some time studying them, trying to figure out when can I enter those. I have a system, basically, a listing system. Well, it can be applied to token launches on chain, whatever, just how can I buy the new coins? And I did that for a couple plays like Jito and Chainflip and others. And then Ondo came about. Ondo was interesting because it was kind of like things fell into place. Larry Fink was bull posting tokenization on TV, and then Ondo drops. And so I felt like it was just a perfect timing. The market was super hot. So I figured, okay, I have a system for listings. Ondo seems pretty good. And well, as some of you might know, listings are complicated to trade because it's super volatile and you don't know how much it's going to dip. Some barely pull back, some give you a big nuke. And Ondo did that. I think it was because the CoinList ICO was 2 years ago. So people were kind of like, I'm done with Ondo, I want to dump it. Or maybe it was market makers, I don't know. But Ondo went down like 70% from the listing like pump, the top of the week. And so I waited, started DCAing. And yeah, honestly, I had the balls, you can say, to go big. We can talk about sizing later, but that was 10% of my portfolio, something I was comfortable with. And yeah, honestly, so I got kind of like lucky because I didn't see it going so well. And also another thing interesting is like, for me, it was a trade at first, but then I realized, well, it's kind of cheap. The narrative has legs. Tokenization is going to stay. So yeah, thanks to a few guys on Twitter, I reconsidered and I just stayed in it. And honestly, yeah, it's been a blast, and it's funny too to be known kind of like as the Ondo guy on Twitter a bit. And yeah, honestly, I don't know if you have more questions around that.
Mm-hmm. So explain a little bit about what your strategy is. So as far as I'm aware, when there's new tokens listing, some of them are going to be going up a lot, some of them are going to be going down a lot. There's just generally that volatility, and you're a trader of the volatility. So is that what initially interested you in Ondo? You saw it did a 70% retracement from the listing price to the price that you bought at, and you looked at the valuations and you said to yourself that this is at a price where it makes sense to be a buyer. Is that so? Explain that strategy behind the initial entry of what you did, because people would want to do something similar on future listings, of course.
Definitely. Well, it has evolved. It's funny because I don't really check the valuation. I mean, I do, but it's not a criteria for me. A lot of people ask me, do you think buying this coin at that market cap? And I always say, I don't really care about the market cap. Personally, I'm playing the flows, or like I'm looking for an equilibrium or actually an inflection point. Because if you think about it, it's just you have a hype token listing, you have some selling pressure, and I want to enter once sellers are done. So then it's my job to first estimate more or less the selling pressure from like maybe airdrops, people that have liquid tokens and that want to get out right away. And then seeing it on the chart. So I don't know, I look at basic TA, like maybe I see a bottom range forming. I think the selling is slowing down and it just feels kind of right. I try to look at the data like time-wise, pullback, etc., but it's not clear, like each listing is different. So anyways, just to say that, yeah, I'm personally looking for inflection points, kind of like in a bull cycle, I mean, in the macro cycle, at 16K, no more sellers, it goes sideways, and then everything reverses. You want to find same thing for a top, of course. You have no more buyers, sellers distribute, and then down we go. So yeah, I'm more looking at the purely technical flows side.
Okay, so it sounds like you use a bunch of data sets and tools to determine when the price is at a point where sellers are losing control and buyers are starting to be in control. It's a new listing, you expect that there's probably going to be volatility now to the upside because a new coin has the attention. And just generally speaking, new listings, eventually, even if they go down a lot, they do go up the fastest. They're the fastest horse. So what is some of the tools that you use to identify what you've just said? I'm guessing you probably use something to do with order book analysis, or you said you analyze what the token distribution is, how much was given to people with airdrops. Maybe if you see a coin that has a lot of coins given to an airdrop, you would expect maybe a larger retracement because there's going to be at least some short-term profit takers in that regard. What is the tools that you use to identify this bottom to buy?
Exactly, yes. There is some preparation. So yeah, you look at airdrops, etc. Also, the market cap at launch, or should I say FDV at launch, matters, because if something is 30 billion FDV at launch, I'm expecting a big pullback. In terms of like tools and so on, it's really basic, honestly. I look at the chart and I look at momentum. Usually, like for Ondo, for example, the selling was really intense. It was going down and down and down, and then it slows down. Then it starts going sideways, and it just felt right. Also, I DCA'd in because I wasn't sure really when would that bottom. Since then, I'm trying to be less aggressive because, well, I did it once, buying too early, and then it just nukes more, and you're kind of like in a shitty position. So yeah, it's really not like I have a very complicated suite of tools. It's mostly some experience. And as I said, each listing is different. So really, I cannot predict. Sometimes they just reverse really quickly, and it's difficult. Also, I should note, it's funny, now listings are not so hot because of the high FDV VC hate, which I totally get. So yeah, it's a little thing, but now it's been quite some time since my last listing. But you can apply this mindset to any new coin launching, on chain, whatever. It doesn't matter.
So it sounds like you've got a couple tools, but a lot of it comes down to intuition. Just seeing what's in front of you and seeing what you sort of feel is happening in the market. How much would you say intuition is sort of driving the system here? What percentage? And how did you develop that intuition, do you think?
It's a lot of it. It's a lot of it. I really appreciated your video on that, and it made me think really, really hard about that, because we all follow somewhat our gut feeling, but when you can truly trust it, it's beautiful. So yeah, well, what I did was studying a lot of listings. I think it was at around 20, and personally, I traded maybe, yeah, like let's say close to 10. So it was just time studying and also practicing. And also, of course, I trade, quite frequently, normally, like playing high time frames, dips, or regular trading. So I also have a feel, I guess, for price action without being an expert. So yeah, it's really a tricky world, and listings are challenging. It's not a regular price action. Everything is accelerated, and you can get hurt.
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of people don't realize, because they're not, in the position that we're in. Intuition, as much as these people don't like to hear, is a large part of the strategy. People want to know, how do they copy you? How do they do what Erebos has done? And they'd love the answer to be, use this tool, wait till this does this, and do that. They'd love it to be something that they can do today, something that's attainable right now. But unfortunately, that doesn't really exist too much in crypto. There's a couple things where today you can use a system and it will work for you without you having intuition. But generally speaking, most of the ways that you make money, the big money in crypto, is from the stuff that you sort of can't even really teach. It's from the feeling that you get from thousands of hours of study. it's something. It's the stuff that you can't put words to, that you sort of just feel on a really deep level. And that's what people don't understand. They watch these videos, and obviously there's going to be some valuable insights, but it's going to be very hard for anyone watching this to copy you, simply because you can't transfer intuition. You can't transfer that. You can try to convert intuition into logic, and then the person viewing it can try to take logic into intuition, but so much of the value of the original lesson is lost in the process of translation. It's like the original Bible being converted from its original language to the English language, and then to another language and another language. You lose the value of the original interpretation. You lose the depth of what was actually being taught. So I think that's something that's really important here for people to understand. A lot of the best people actually at what they do in crypto are they're the least able to explain how they do it. So like, for example, you're saying like, what you said sounded pretty simple essentially, but in reality, I think what you do is actually much more complex, but it's hard to explain. Would you say you agree?
So true. And do you know Rhino? He's a Twitter guy, a trader.
I think so, yep.
He's really good. And people ask him, what's your system? And he just says, balls tingling. So yeah, that's exactly that. And you said it best in your video about intuition. It's just experience that becomes automatic, subconscious. And it's also super helpful because you don't have all the messy, like you're gonna think too much, worry. It's just there, like you're driven, tac, job is done. So yeah, just put the hours in, guys. It's just the way to do it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you view the explanation of a concept as the interlinking of a network, right? It's the connecting of the dots. Mm-hmm. The dots connected in your head is like an incredibly complex system. There's millions of connections of different nuances and little details that you can't really explain through text or through voice, right? We can try to explain how you did something, but the amount of connections that we're going to be able to make in people's brains is maybe 1% of the actual connections in your head. And that's the problem with learning when you haven't experienced something yourself. You're not going to get that depth that you need. So let's in this video try to connect as many dots for people as possible. You put 10% of your net worth, I guess, into this position, meaning that you had some level of decent conviction in it. What do you think was the combination of things that you saw that gave you conviction? I know it's obviously back to that intuition thing, but what can you explain to people as what you saw that gave you conviction?
Okay. Well, I said it was the narrative. Honestly, it was perfect timing, like tokenization. We have a new token around there. Then also market conditions. It's really important because you can see a listing when the market is nuky, no one cares. They're too worried protecting their positions. But then when the market is super hot, people are fighting to get into the latest coins and everything sends. And it was a couple months ago, so let me remember. Also, the team is strong. So basically, there is like a fundamentals side, and then technically, I just like the setup. But as I said, interestingly enough, this wasn't a token I was waiting for a long time. It's mostly perfectly, and it was there. Just took it. But yeah, honestly, it's mostly about that, the narrative. That's something I care a lot about these days. It has to be in the right pocket, and usually people pick it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think what helped this Ondo sort of trade that you did was Larry Fink coming out and announcing that he was launching some sort of tokenization project on Ethereum. And I think Ondo being the new real world asset project on, I guess it's a ERC20, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
but being the new one, launching at the time of the real world asset sort of boom with Larry Fink sort of triggering that. It sort of was just this perfect combo of like people seeing this and then thinking, what do I buy? And Ondo was just that perfectly positioned coin, I guess, for that narrative. Would you agree that's what was happening?
Yeah. Also, something that people should be aware of is the shilling. I knew a couple big traders were looking at it. Actually, something I mentioned before, I love watching the likes section on Twitter. Some people hide it. Mine are publics. You can see what I like on Twitter. So I was scrolling, I don't know which one, but a big guy was liking some Ondo posts before the listing. So I knew, okay, he's probably going to buy and chill. And also a couple other guys that I know trade most listings. So I knew that people would chill it. So I was kind of like safe to ape. That's another thing, because in the end, if you buy something, no one cares, no one is talking about it, you're not going to make money.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point, actually, that with a coin, even if it, like, let's say a new listing, right, and it goes down a lot in price, if what influencers do is they tend to post about a coin after it's gone up. And that's what allows the momentum to continue. Because eventually a coin will go up a little bit. But the amount of people talking about, oh, it's gone up now, is what will dictate its continuation of the rally. So I guess what you're trying to say is that there was enough influencers that you could see who would chill it, that whenever the Ondo price did eventually make a nice bottoming pattern or go up a bit, there would be enough influencers talking about that, because they're like, oh, it's going up now, I got to flex on Twitter, that it would create that continuation in the rally. Is that sort of what you were saying?
Completely. I guess it's also I don't know how to frame that, but yes, I follow a lot of traders, and everybody on my feed was talking about Ondo a couple hours, because they feel and then they chill. I do the same thing. Well, even though I don't need people to buy my bags, really, like, it's not what I mean. It's just that I always buy stuff before tweeting about it, obviously, mostly. And so the Twitter game is funny, because some guys actually, of course, monetize their audience, and like they feel, then they share it just so they can sell higher. But no, it's interesting, and you have to understand something we would certainly talk about, attention and anticipating some rotations. And it's really a social game in the end. You're trying to buy before others, you front run them. That's it.
I think that's a really good lesson. It's a good little sort of mental model. Think about the coin going up 2x and thinking about how many people are going to talk about that. And if it is not many people, then it's probably not worth buying. If you can see that, okay, if it 2x's, a lot of people are going to talk about this, then it's probably something worth buying. That's a good mental model I think you would agree with, or at least you probably applied yourself indirectly.
So true. Look at Toshi. Like, you bought the Pico bottom, and then because you were spot on the base thesis, well, more and more people talk about it, and then it's like a snowball.
So, exactly. And as the flow of money comes in, that makes it easy too.
Yeah, honestly, it's a fascinating game we're playing, but it's pretty simple on first principles. Just want to be early and anticipate a big trend, or join momentum. That's also another one. And I see people that are extremely talented at that. They don't think too much. They just buy what's hot. Like Hasaka is like that. Some other guys. So you just have to be in the right tokens all the time. That's pretty much your job.
Yeah, there's another guy, Web3 Quant, which he's probably one of the best as well.
Oh, I love him.
He's really good at just buying what's got strength. And I think, as an investor or a trader, you have to think to yourself, what are you better at? Are you better at front running trends, or are you better at hopping on trends? And that's a really important distinction. Generally speaking, you can't be really great at both. You pick one or the other. So if you're watching this video and you aren't clear on which one you're better at doing, you probably should try to get clear at that. Because if you're clear with it, then you obviously know what you're good at, and then you can double down on that. So it sounds like, Erebos, you're more buy when it's sort of not dead, but dormant, and then sell when it's euphoric, versus hopping on a trend. Or do you do a bit of both?
That's a great one. These days, I would say I lean more and more into the trend following momentum. But it's true that historically, I like buying when it's quiet or when it's cheap, but also it's one, riskier, and then it requires more work. So I do believe that it's certainly safer and better to be following the trend, because you don't have to really have a thesis. You just recognize what's hot and you get in. Also, usually the moves are pretty fast if you can time it right and up in when it's relatively early. For example, like I still hate myself for not jumping in really early. I mean, I did have redemption because I don't know, I've made like, I think 3 million on total on free trades on WIF recently, but it was with size and it's like late, very late. I was looking at it in January at 30 cents thinking, it's now cooling off after the first big run. And sadly, I didn't have conviction in memes, which was a big mistake this cycle, not being in memes, but I don't know, we cannot catch them all. So yeah, honestly, I think for most people, it's better to look at what's hot rather than trying to guess beforehand what's going to be hot. What's your approach around that?
I think I agree. I think for most people, being able to forward look like multiple steps ahead, the second and third order consequences of what might happen, and sort of just predict the future, right? Like being able to buy something when no one talks about it and sell it when everyone is basically predicting the future. And you have to be good at predicting the future, obviously, to make that work. When you're hopping on trends, you don't even really need to predict the future. You just need to expect the current future movement to continue. There's nothing new you're trying to see. It's just, is what is happening now going to get more? Is the current trend going to be more? Which is a lot easier to do, in my opinion, than trying to analyze what you think is going to happen. Because, like, for example, the base thesis, obviously now it looks simple, but at the time, not many people understood it. If people understood it, the price of Toshi would never have got so low. That was really basically just looking at what a future possibility could be, analyzing the entire chessboard, and being able to essentially predict the future. And that's probably the hardest way to approach crypto. I agree that one of the easier ways is to just hop on trends. But personally, I actually find the trend following stuff harder. I find it harder to keep going with the current trend than to try to find something that people aren't like sort of hopping onto. I don't know why. I haven't thought about it enough, but that's just personally me. I like finding stuff when no one gives a fuck about it. And that's where I've found it's been easiest to get conviction, when I can see something and no one else agrees with me. When everyone agrees with me and it's still, it's a momentum play, it sort of fucks with my head. I like being able to wait weeks to months for an entry. I like finding a coin and going, I'll buy this in 6 months when people stop caring about it. But having to like buy it this week when it's hot on a dip is tricky. So what would you say? Why would you say you've changed to? It said that you said at one point that it takes less time to be a momentum sort of guy. Is that one of the main reasons you've changed, like to save time, or like why do you think you've made the pivot from the sort of contrarian to momentum?
One aspect is size and liquidity, I would say, because if you're early, usually you have less liquidity, it's smaller. So now these days, I need something that's quite liquid, even though, I'm not a giga whale, but it's a little thing, it's still there. And also it's definitely because I've become more and more trading oriented these days rather than investing. But it's true, someone asked me before, are you a trader or an investor? I would say I'm 50-50, honestly. These days, that's also an interesting one. Since it's a late cycle, I'm more of a trader and I don't want to have a long-term approach. I'm thinking get the money and get out. But it's true for me, I don't know, we always evolve. Our interest is going to change. And I feel like, to me, it's becoming easier to be following than to be an investor. And it's true that the time aspect is already a concern. It's true in the end, because, yeah, you know that very well, like doing research, you can spend weeks going through all the ecosystems and the coins and all that. And also sometimes you buy something and it doesn't move and you're like, oh, damn, like no one is seeing what I'm seeing. So it's much easier, much more rewarding to just recognize, don't judge. If WIF is out tomorrow, I like WIF. If it's Pepe, I like Pepe. So yeah, to be fair, to me, it's simpler, it's cleaner. And also it teaches me to be just fluid and respect the market pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my strategy is definitely better to do in a market environment where you have more time to research and accumulate. Whereas in a bull market, things are moving very quickly. Everyone's paying attention to everything. Any edge or alpha does not exist to be taken for a very long time because everyone's very fixated looking for any little pocket of value that they can extract. In a bear market, everyone's, the tourists are gone. Everyone's sort of, no one's really understanding what can happen. They're not really risk on, focused on the market, trying to make all this money like they are now. So I think a more long-term sort of buying during when no one cares about something like trade is a lot easier during a bear market because that period of time where people don't care about it is longer. The period of time that someone doesn't care about something in a bull run is generally a lot shorter. And the inefficiency of temporarily reduced attention or price doesn't happen for very long. So definitely the momentum stuff makes more sense in a bull run because also in a bull run, things are going up generally with minimal pullbacks. You don't have weeks to months to accumulate in a bull run. You have maybe a couple weeks, a few weeks, and that's it.
I agree. Its conditions evolve a lot, and it's true. It's much better, much simpler to just trade, especially since like things can get hot and die a week later. Like it's really, really intense. So you have to be kind of quick on your feet. And I also believe you can have your thesis, and it's kind of like accumulating at the beginning of the bull, late bear, but then as the cycle progresses, then it makes more sense to be following the trend. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. So what do you think is the biggest insights you've had? Because at least for me, when I've had a big play and it's sort of the play's not necessarily done, but I've seen it through and I've obviously had a big win, I have all these epiphanies and insights, and I feel like it's at the end of a successful trade where I find I get the most clarity on why it was successful and on how to do the market properly. So what is the biggest insights you've had then after you've had this successful trade with Ondo? What have you learned? What's been the biggest learning lessons?
Yes, I would say having conviction and being patient, because as we talked about briefly offline, the emotional side and the swings were pretty intense because in the end, well, yeah, I guess I saw like 7 figures swings from one week to another at times. So I would say it's just that having conviction, being comfortable, seeing your P&L fluctuates a lot. Also, something I'm extremely big on is sizing. People know that. So yeah, my style is high conviction bets with size. So it means that I filter a lot what I trade, what I invest in. I only take the absolute best setups so that I'm comfortable really pushing size into it. And when I mean size, I would say like generally up to 25% of my portfolio on it. And really, because that's also something that's good. Like, I don't know if you actually use sometimes expected value. So that's the calculation to see if a trade is worth it. You basically take your max win, max loss, where you estimate, of course, max win, max loss, and the probability of each. So then you have a clear picture rationally of, is it a good opportunity or not? How much can I make? How much can I lose? And what's the skew between the two? And with my style, I would say I should be like around 80% win rate. So I'm actually allowed technically to push really some size into it, not too much, because then it can be too much to handle with the volatility. But you get what I'm saying. Sometimes really like someone said it on Twitter, like he said something like 5 times a year you have money on the floor, just pick it up. So that's exactly that. For me, Ondo was one of those where it's clear that it's going to work. So now I just have to be a man and ape in with real capital.
That's so funny. And I agree, because a lot of people message me like, even recently, like, Daniel, where's all the coins that you're telling people to buy? Like, why aren't I seeing heaps of calls being made? And it's pretty much for this reason. Like 5 times a year, like you said, it's like that tweet, there's just money on the floor. There's just free money. And the reason people go wrong is they just either can't identify free money because they're not good enough yet, or they can identify free money, but they don't have the patience, right? And they end up chasing mid-tier opportunities with a decreased win rate. And when your win rate's lower, that means you're losing more. And if you're losing more, you're not going to, your wins aren't going to cover your losses as much. If you take more than just the high conviction plays, you're decreasing all the stats of how good your strategy is, right? The more selective you are with your implementation of your strategy, the more technically profitable you're going to be. So if you're someone who constantly chases mid setups, you're going to get mid stats, you're going to get mid returns. And that's why that's a problem when people are constantly saying, like, when's the next call? I'm sure you get the message too. Erebos, when's the next Ondo? What's the next one? Surely you've got another one. That they can't fucking wait. They got zero patience. And that's because they don't understand the game. So, like, do you agree with that? Are you very selective with how you do things?
1,000%. And I can tell people, I used to be that guy who thought, oh, there is money to be made every day. I need to catch everything. I cannot be just missing out on stuff. And then I looked at it, and sometimes I would like even put nothing, like pennies into a trade, spend some time on it, and then realize, like, what am I doing? Like, this thing is not even interesting. So then I realized, okay, be more selective. And honestly, I'm more and more and more selective because, yeah, if you look at it, you just need a couple plays a year to really make a difference. And also something I like to talk about is the mental side. If you're winning a lot, you're more confident, you'll be more performant, and so on. So it's a reflexive loop. You get better and better. Because if you've been losing a lot, I guess most people know what it feels like. You're not going to feel great about your next trade. So really, like, it's just about avoiding some pain and then being, as you said, aware. You can see that this is a golden goose, and I have to really leverage that. So yeah, the same. A lot of people ask me also, I wish I had more plays to share, but if the market doesn't give me anything, I'm not gonna just invent it.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I said when someone asked me for more calls the other day. I was like, you can't force a coin. You can't just force 100x out of thin air. It almost sort of has to like come to you, at least in my experience. You can't go hunting it down. I mean, you can obviously do research, but it almost like comes to you as if it was like given to you in a way. A lot of these plays, they just sort of, because you're never going to know what the next coin is or what the next trade is. So you don't actually know where to look or what you're looking for, but you know when it appears in front of you that it's the thing. So it's sort of like you don't know what you want, but you will know that you want it when you see it, sort of thing. Have you found it's the same in your experience?
Exactly, yes, most of the time. Of course, you can do research because sometimes you're not aware that this token exists. And then, well, of course, you're not going to play it if you don't know about it.
Yes.
But generally, yeah, the best plays, they kind of like come to you. That's something these days I don't do a lot of research, but I would say honestly, maybe I'm going to look at 100 coins or 100 early projects that have no token, and maybe like not even a handful are going to catch my eye. And in the end, I might play one or two out of 100 that I look at. And also it applies to like trading setups. Maybe I don't like the way BTC is trading, so I wait. I mean, I can talk about my trading side. Like lately, I made a big move on WIF just because I was patient in that range, very annoying PA on Bitcoin. And I knew it would potentially rug. So I was ready, 30% in stables. And I let the market come to me. Then it feels right. I get in. And then the play just works because I was patient and I was able to recognize that it's time to be aggressive. But sometimes, yeah, unfortunately, you're just going to have to wait even maybe a month without doing much because things are just not right.
And I feel like you can take this sort of insight into other verticals, into other in sort of a metaphorical sense. Like even in, for example, the dating world, right? The guy who's desperate, who's looking for another girl, who's like, Daniel, please, I need a girlfriend, please. He's never going to find one. He's going to be single forever. He's going to find nothing. But the guy who's confident in his abilities, in his skills, he's gotten that 10 out of 10 trade before. He's gotten that 10 out of 10 goal. He knows he can find another one. He's cool just not having anything come up because he knows Eventually, it'll come. If he puts himself out there, he knows it'll appear. He's not going to force it. It'll appear when it's ready to appear. Same thing in crypto. Can't force a call. You can't force a coin. All these people begging, please find me another coin. Can't do it. It's not going to happen. We keep researching, but you can't force it to come into the market. So now that we're talking about Erebos, please give me a coin. Do you have anything that you're looking at the moment? Anything that interests you at all?
Yeah, but it's trading. So because we are at the stage where I think alts are going to really move. So yeah, the conditions for that would be Bitcoin to go above 72, basically go on that parabolic run. ETH is starting to move. So I feel like a lot of coins that have done nothing are going to start moving. You can have it's not an endorsement, but things like a lot of dispersion. That was the big term flying around Twitter lately. But what I see is that you're going to have a lot of opportunities on alts, and I would assume a mix of new kind of WIF and also old coins that have done nothing for a long time. So I still need to do the work, but personally, yeah, I want to take some trades on alts, just technical level to level stuff. And then in terms of verticals, I mean, it's basic, but I respect the market. As I said, momentum, AI and memes are what is really dominating. What else? I mean, yeah, I do like ETH at the moment because, well, ETF. Actually, we should get the ETF tomorrow, which is really surprising. Everybody was not ready for that. But yeah, honestly, as we said, I cannot really force it. I'm just chilling in spots, and when I see it, I see it. That's it.
I think I agree with you on the old coin pumping sort of idea, because for context, there's some guys that I know who ran a big crypto group last cycle, and they're relaunching it. They shut it down in the bear market. They're relaunching it tomorrow. And all the coins that they're talking about are the old coins that they found last bull run before they sort of forgot about crypto. It's all things like Aave, DOT, Atom, Cardano, all these sort of old projects that still have communities that still people will talk about, that probably they haven't really pumped because everyone that's come into crypto to support this bull run are people who were in crypto in the last bull run. It's not many new people, at least in my experience. I'm not having new people come to me to do crypto. It's like 80, 90% people who've had past experience coming back into the game. And I think when you have new people entering, and these sort of traditional world sort of guys who run those paid groups from beforehand, and people are looking for something to buy that hasn't pumped yet, I think they're going to be chasing these older coins. I think that's what's going to interest these people who are coming back. And also the reason they're relaunching this group is because the type of people who bought Aave and DOT, they're all coming back into the market now. They've recognized this. All their following, they're all hitting them up about crypto again, or starting to. And once we break 72K, I think that's going to kick off even more. All those people who were interested in our Aave, DOT, all that shit, they're going to be coming back in soon, and they're probably going to rebid the shit they bid last cycle. At least they don't really buy new things as much. So I think definitely a play there. A lot of people have talked about that a lot of these old coins are never going to go up because there's just too much coins. But I feel like, yes, we're very diluted, but we were also very diluted in the last bull run. I think to a certain extent, not everything. To a certain extent, these decent old coins are going to go up. Aave is still a decent project, right? That stuff still fundamentally will have its time to shine. Maybe across the board they go up less than last cycle, but still, I think I agree with you there.
Yeah, it's alt season vibes, well, I don't know exactly the extent of it. I do agree that we probably don't get crazy pumps like 2021 because the market is much bigger, more coins. But, I would believe that everything pumps like a 2x, 3x at least, and some might even send harder. And also it's like BTC pairs, they just can send 2x in 2 days. That's not unrealistic. And also there is that whole musical chairs kind of rotation, Twitter games. So, everybody's going to pump one coin and then next week another coin. And it's just everything is going to fly left and right. So I'm going to try and play that.
Mm-hmm.
But also respecting momentum. Like in the end, like hopping on a trade, technically, just based on charts, you get some triggers and you target whatever region. So yeah, it's more like for people that have a bit of experience, I guess, or you can have a thesis in a way. If you see a lot of L1s pumping, you like certain L1, the chart is okay, didn't pump much, maybe you can position like that. But in my case, it's going to be pure TA, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to add two other pieces of confluence, you also have historically ETH BTC rallying being when alts rally. Like whenever alts pumped, that was what happened. And that's obviously looking like what's going to be continuing to happen once we get an ETF approval. It depends if we get ETH flows from this ETF. If the ETF's approved and no one buys the ETH ETF, then it might be a sort of a dead rally. But that's one thing that people can keep in mind for confluence. The main thing was that ETH Bitcoin rallying, which it looks like it might continue to do, is historically what led to alts doing well. And the other thing I wanted to say actually was that once everything's pumped, people look for the thing that hasn't pumped. And that's why old coins, even the shittest projects, often pump last, and they often pump the hardest. It's because people look at purely a chart by chart comparison, and the charts will look the same. One project's new, one project's good, the other's old and shit, but the chart's the same. It's the same triangle. And so in a bull market where people are just buying charts, it's project agnostic. It's just buying the thing that looks like a good setup. So I think people are going to see that, okay, WIF and all this shit has gone ballistic. What's the next one? What's the next thing that's going to go up? And they're going to see a lot of these older projects with beautiful charts that are probably shit projects, but it's the same chart as this other good thing, and they're going to probably buy that. It makes sense to me too.
Exactly. And we had a preview of that in December, around December, with all the L1 rotation. We had like Mina and Phantom and a couple like AVAX, chains that are honestly like pretty dead. Not much happening, but just because traders like it and there is some volume and then just reflexivity. So yeah, I can see that happening for most of the coins, and of course a few are going to really send, and hopefully we can catch those.
Do you think you shared everything about the emotional side of dealing with $1 million UPNL swings?
I can add some more context. Also, another reason why I like high conviction bets is because it makes the emotional side easier. Because let's say you buy a complete cheater, it goes down, you're going to be much more under pressure than if it was something you have confidence in. You just don't care. You're like, this is a good project, it will come back. I've done that in the past. Like if you buy a bad one, it goes against you, then your first reflex is, I just want to dump that shit. So it helps a lot. So yeah, honestly, it's painful, to be fair. Ondo was annoying me a lot because it was chopping. I was up 3x in 2 days, and then it went down maybe like 50%. So I don't know what was the swing, but maybe like it was down 1 million, something like that. Also, not looking too much at your P&L. Don't overthink it. If you have confidence in a swing, it's going to take a couple months. You don't have to check the charts every day. You don't have to check your P&L every day, because you're just going to FUD yourself out of the position, or focus on the low time frame and be like, oh my God, it's nuking on the 1 minute. I need to get out. So yeah, I have a time frame. I have a a time frame. In my case, I knew I wanted to keep that a couple months. And nowadays I felt like, okay, this is pretty much the right time for me. It's probably going to keep going up, but that's enough. So yeah, high conviction also about size. I talked about that on another interview. If I had more size, I would have been less comfortable. So you have to find something that's both, a size, an amount.
Yep.
That's both enough in terms of conviction. That's something I regret. I bought Prime around $3, and my conviction was through the roof, and I only put 10% of my portfolio on that. And looking back, it just doesn't make sense. Like I had giga conviction on it, and only 10%, it was done. So that's also something. It has your sizing has to match your conviction, but also if you have too much size, then you're gonna have a hard time keeping it, because either it's gonna go down and you want to just dump it, or if it goes up a bit, you're already up a lot. There is a sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sweet spot to me. I said, like, if I have giga conviction, around 20% is a good number, but then everybody's different. Of course, my portfolio is certainly much bigger than most people. I mean, yeah, you figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Emotional. Yeah, that's pretty much it, honestly. In the end, you need also to get used to it. Nowadays, to me, it doesn't affect me that much. I'm used to being in positions, and it's just part of the game now.
Yeah. Well, with the sizing thing, when you have the bigger your position size, the higher the chance you fuck it up, right? The higher the probability you make a mistake. So yes, you put more in, you make more money, but there's a higher chance you make less money. So it's like you said, it's finding that sweet spot of like, okay, we're making really good money here if it works out, but not so much that I'm going to fuck it up. So because I'm going to do better on this trade because it's not too much money, I'm actually going to make more in the long term. And I think that's the key. And also, I think with, you had 15K and now 13 mil, 6 years, right? That's in a pretty quick amount of time for most people. But
yes,
what people don't realize is that as you scale up, you slowly get more and more desensitized to the fluctuations. Like when you had 15K, I'm sure if you lost 5K in a day, that would have hurt, right? But now you've got 13 mil. If you lost $1 million a day, you probably don't feel it, or you feel it in the same way as losing 2,000. And I think it's all about the percentage of the portfolio of your net worth that you lose. If you lose 1% of your net worth and you're a billionaire, you're probably not going to feel it so much because you've technically, mentally, you've priced in that you still have a lot of what you have, right? If you've got a whole fucking room of gold and you lose a couple bars, it's not going to hurt, even if the bars are worth a lot of money. So I think it's just as you get a larger portfolio, you should keep your position sizing consistent in terms of the percentage. You should be aiming to be able to emotionally handle that. But the dollar amount as you grow your portfolio for each position is going to grow, and you should keep growing that. I think a mistake some people make is they get all this money and they position size as if they're a lot poorer, and they're not position sizing up to reflect their net worth. Would you agree?
Oh, that's the best point ever. Because for some reason, I see a lot of traders, even experienced one, making that mistake. Like I was talking with someone recently who said like 7 figures, and I'm starting to run into trouble. Like I cannot really size up, like I'm slowing down. And yeah, think in percentages, because otherwise you're just gonna stay. Yeah, like you imagine you're comfortable buying 100K of a coin. If your portfolio is 10x that, you have to 10x your position size. It's just, it has to be gradual. Of course, also something that can be useful. I felt that before. If you have a big jump in net worth, you might need a bit of time to adjust to kind of like, okay, that's a lot of money. I'm not used to that. But yeah, definitely you want things to grow accordingly. And again, avoid thinking too much about the dollars because it can really fuck you up.
Well, with portfolio fluctuations, there's two sides of the coin, right? There's getting used to making the money, but then there's also getting used to the losing. So if you turn $1 million into $5 million, your net worth's now $5 million, you might sort of mentally price in and get used to making lots of money. So now if you go from 5 to 7, it's going to feel like the same as going from 1 to 1.2, right? It's maybe a 20% gain in your net worth, but it's going to feel like way more. It's going to feel the same, right? But you haven't gotten used to the downside, right? You don't give a fuck about making money now, but as soon as you lose it, you're going to feel it just like you felt it before.
Oh man!
And I think, so I think the big thing is when you make a lot of money, understand that you're only now getting used to the upside, and you still have to adjust to the downside, and there will be downside. You're not going to never go down, and so that getting used to that is just going to be being able to handle the fact that you're losing larger amounts. You'll eventually just adapt to it.
Exactly. In the end, if you do your job correctly, you're supposed to, you have 5 figures fluctuations, then 6, then 7, and one day, hopefully, you make 10 million a month, you lose 5 the next. It's just business as usual.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, you definitely need to get used to it. I remember I got crushed in 2022. I was down 50% at some point, like 1.5 million. I can tell you that for someone who's just a freshly minted millionaire, I was really down bad. and I was starting to question, am I going to go broke again? And yeah, I mean, you really have to, yeah, you have your scars, your battle scars, and you're going to get used to it. Really, like it's just money in, money out, and honestly, I mean, most people understand it's basic, but yes, just stay in the game. I think Kobe said it: time in the market beats time in the market. If you spend 10 years in crypto, you should make a lot of money. You're gonna have opportunities, and you're gonna make it happen. You might have some bad losses. You might miss out on stuff, but in the long run, you keep growing, compounding that, and you should be fine, really.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, don't get too attached to like one outcome.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So talking about that point of time in the market, of really digging deep and learning as much as you can and sort of seeing it through, how have you gone about learning in the past 6 years? Where are you getting your information from? I'm sure by this point you probably make your own alpha, but you did mention that you followed a couple Twitter accounts who helped build conviction. I'm sure you used it as some sort of confluence with your strategy. So how have you previously and how are you currently, and how would you recommend to people to get as good as you are at crypto? Where should they get their information from? Who should they follow, etc.?
Right. So that's key. Like in anything, you want to learn from the best because they have the most experience and also they give the best lessons. Uh, it makes me laugh because the first YouTuber I followed, his name was Crypto Crow. That fucker was just a scammer, and I didn't know better. And he's just bad actor. But anyway, so yeah, in the end, I still do it a lot. I learn from podcasts. So I don't know, I can name a few, but all the Blockworks podcasts. So you have like the framework guys like Bell Curve, Empire. I really like Santiago Santos also, guys like that, traders. So you have to curate or create a list of rock stars. I mean, I would put you in that list, like people that are already top level in terms of they have a specialty, but yeah, you learn a bit there and there, and then it has to match your style. But so yeah, honestly, it's a constant process. People would certainly be surprised that I still have to learn a lot. It's not like I got this figured out, and it's a constant process. So yeah, these days it's a lot of podcasts. My Twitter is like elite, honestly, in terms of the people I follow. A lot of the biggest traders, like I don't know, like smartest money. I mean, I'm not in love with his style, but I mean, he has so much size. Like I think he's long 100 million, like on different coins at the moment. So ridiculous. So yeah, and it's professionals in different sectors. Like I like the VC stuff for the thesis building and investment side, and I follow the best traders too. And that's what I did. I learned trading, I mean, properly last year from guys like Cold-Blooded Schiller, a bit of Trader Main, and yeah, like some others. Like I also love Donald and CryptoCred. I watch their technical roundup frequently. So in the end, if you have gaps in your knowledge, trading, investing, whatever, narratives, you can listen to like guys like Hansen that are really good at being in the pockets of hype. And yeah, you just build a base. And then, yes, as you said, later on, you should be able to be less reliant on others. But still, these days, I spend a lot of time consuming content because it gives me ideas and I still learn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? What would be like your top, I don't know, top ways to learn?
I think, yeah, YouTube hasn't been super useful. I think definitely Twitter and podcasts has been useful. I think as well, getting information from places that isn't a Twitter account is super important as well. I think in at least a few of my bigger plays, a really important component has been just talking to people who aren't necessarily Twitter people, but they are connected in certain industries and in certain sectors and know certain things, which I can sort of take in and then process. And then I sort of almost spit out my interpretation of certain information. So like with Base, right? I talk to different people who work in Base or people who work in Coinbase, people who are building in the ecosystem, and you really get a feel for what's coming and sort of what's in the future for that sort of sector. And they don't necessarily have the thesis building brain, but I do. So they might have information that they don't really know what to do with, but I'm able to use that information and turn it into making money, because I know that each piece of information could potentially be something that someone else is going to find out later and use that to make a decision. So with Base, right, all the money is going to Base. When everyone realizes this, that the decision they're going to make is buy the meme coin, right? That was pretty obvious. That was me interpreting information that others couldn't see the thesis behind. So I think for me, it's obviously using Twitter, public information, absolutely. But a big part of it is just talking to people, networking, seeing what they're saying, and then putting it through your filter and spitting out, how to make money from what's going to come. And that's how I, found some of my bigger plays. It's not really like a guy on Twitter talked about Base, but absolutely, like, if you are willing to spend the time on Twitter, like, so many guys on Twitter talked about Ondo when it came out. You could have bought Ondo based on the sort of shared conviction of what other people who are smart were talking about on Twitter. They could have followed you, for example. Everyone should follow your Twitter. So I definitely think combination of Twitter, podcasts, and if you're good at crypto, then obviously networking is an easy part of it too.
Yeah, exactly. It's, as you said, you connect the dots, and it's the same principle in like crypto overall, and even in life, you could say. You have a ton of noise, and sometimes you have a bit of signal. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, you have to just sit through all the noise, and sometimes you have a little nugget, a little piece of data that's going to be useful, and then you can apply it. Personally, I've made quite a lot of money following some calls from Twitter. Last cycle, I was really into following what the VCs were doing and investing in the good coins. I mean, Ondo is a VC coin too, but so yeah, you just have to filter the information you get, and the better the source, of course, the better information you can get out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%. So you're obviously a member of the mastermind. You're also in the inner circle. I think you've been in the mastermind for quite a while, and you said to me off the call that you've gotten quite a bit of value from being not necessarily just in the mastermind, but also just following the stuff that I've posted online publicly. So I'm curious, what of the stuff that you've learned from me has helped you the most probably mostly with the Ondo play, I assume. That's been the most recent big play. Like, what have you learned from me that has helped you in crypto the most?
Oh yeah, honestly, it's a lot of people like hating on paid groups or paid communities, but a couple are actually extremely good. So yeah, and obviously as a context, of course, I'm already experienced, had a strong foundation, but surprisingly, I got a lot still from other people. And in your case, I think you have a very high level view of the market. You just dissect it and you can see some trends, patterns. And so I can go through a few things that were interesting. I really like the idea of it's known, but understanding perfectly the idea of the pump and dump Ponzi scheme, which is understanding how early you are to something. Because while you have a very good picture that I like about a pyramid of birds, and you have one sitting on top and is shitting on the others, and the one on the very top is like the team and insiders, because they get in first, they get the token super cheap, and then you have a wave of, let's say, smart retail, and very late retail that's unfortunately going to buy the top and go through pain. So every time you get into a trade, you have to understand, and it's relevant for my listings, understand, okay, who has tokens? What are they going to do? Am I early or not? Is it likely for me to get dumped on, etc.? So that's a very key idea. And obviously you want to be as early as possible, so then can find ways to do that. Then I also enjoy, well, we talked about intuition, and although I follow it instinctively, now I'm even more aware, thanks to your like insights, that yeah, I should trust it 100%. Definitely, I still sit down and go through my analysis rationally without too much intuition, or like, I go through it logically on paper, but still, I mean, it's rarely wrong. and I know that I have to follow it. And then that comes from experience, of course. That's the thing that's interesting, because a lot of people would say, oh, well, like we say, you have to follow your intuition. But if you're like a newbie, your intuition is probably going to be shit. So that's the thing. Like us, we see a play, we think it's good, decent chances we are right. But then if you don't have the experience and the knowledge, you cannot trust yourself that much, at least in that context. So yeah, something to keep in mind. And maybe another one would be, I guess, the attention game and the rotation. I think it's always a bull market showing the right tokens, or you could say it a different way, which would be like in the right pockets of strength. And really, it comes back to the idea of trend following momentum. I think about it a lot these days. There is always a coin that's leading. It's been, for example, last year, Solana was extremely hot for a long time. All you had to do was buy that. Then it was with the memes overall, Pepe, and the sorts. So if you understand what people like, then you are in a better position than if you just, at this time, for example, if you're a DeFi guy and you refuse to look at what's hot, well, you're going to have a hard time. So yeah, everybody understands the attention game and rotations. And from that, you can also, well, it's a bit more difficult, but you can also understand and recognize when the attention is shifting. We had that a bit on base, where it was starting to pick up. You see some volumes, people start tweeting about it, and then you see, okay, there is something there, and you can get involved at that time. So yeah, honestly, that's pretty much it. But I really love people who analyze something and then establish some first principles, because it's really easy to get lost in the details, and you have a system that's extremely complicated. No, you should be able to pick it apart and have a few core ideas. That's much better, I think, to learn that way.
Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good list. So thank you for sharing that. So I think everyone watching this can see that you know your stuff and that you're 100% worth following. So again, I'm going to link on the screen Erebos's Twitter. He posts a lot on there. In fact, he posted the Ondo trade fully publicly on Twitter. I've already showed you guys the photo. So if you're trying to make money from crypto, definitely a worthy follow. I don't know if you have any final thoughts or insights or lessons you want to leave for people watching the video, but if you wanted to leave anything, I'm sure they'd be interested to hear any final thoughts that you had on crypto.
All right, I appreciate again. It was a great discussion. I think something valuable is to specialize in crypto, because especially these days, you have so many things happening all at once that it's helpful to have kind of like a style or a vertical you focus on. For example, my best friend at the moment, he's been doing that for a while. He's exclusively focused on memes. And I respect that. I hope he's going to be able to feed me some plays over the years. But yes, as we said, also, you don't have to choose your thing. You can, for example, look at AI. It's hot. So then go through all the projects, listen to some podcast on AI, understand the game. You have the GPU network, so you're going to have the inference and decentralized models. And so basically you get deep into a topic, and then you're going to have an advantage over someone who doesn't know anything. Same thing on the trading side. Maybe you develop a certain system like me, or where it's listing, or maybe you like momentum and you just trade momentum on the biggest tokens. So yeah, I would say find your little niche where you can really outperform or dominate everybody else. And then honestly, just keep learning, keep compounding. Honestly, it's pretty wild to me now that I'm in that position. Starting really, from the bottom, so to speak. And now it's just playing, well, I guess, games. But yeah, I'll just leave you with that. I guess we covered so much, but yeah, honestly, just oh yeah, maybe I guess really to hammer this point home is you should take less trades every year. Every year you have a few bangers. You should really focus on that. Yes, that's it for me.
I fully agree. Like in my mind, the past couple of weeks, I've just been thinking like, man, like I would love to just even in the next cycle, just a few plays and then just huge conviction, few $1 million in each position. And just that, like I'm sort of excited for that. Just finding the next couple big things and forgetting the rest. Like I think that's 100% the way. It's just conviction, have an edge, have conviction, and that fixes like 95% of the problems that you'd ever have. So again, thank you for your time, man. It's obviously very, appreciated that someone that has an 8-figure net worth would come and give an hour or more of their time to help other people who are probably going to compete with you to try to take your money. So
okay. I'm waiting for you guys.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, a good thing that intuition is really important because it's not going to be very hard for people to copy you, right, without the intuition. So you've got probably a 4-year head start before they catch up to you based on the lessons you've taught them for them to get intuition. So yeah, thank you again for coming on the call. For anyone who's watching this, we mentioned the mastermind a few times. There's guys like Erebos and others who are really focused in on crypto in the group. You'll find a link in the description if anyone wants to join us. It's just like a bunch of people trying to make money from crypto, following my advice and other people's insights. So yeah, thank you again for your time, Erebos, and anyone watching this. I'll see you guys in the next videos. Cheers.